Hi, I'm Jasmine, and you're watching my channel, The Curious White Coat. I just finished my first week as a resident doctor, which is crazy because it just seems like moments ago I was hearing from Emory that I was going to be a resident, and now I've been a resident here for a week. A week may not seem like a lot of time, like in the grand scheme of things, but a lot has happened, and I wanted to make this video to reflect on the time that I've had so far and to share what I've learned, because there's definitely been a lot of learning and growth in these past 7 days. So just quick disclaimer, all of the content on my channel reflects my own views and in no way represents anyone else or anyone else's views. So I just wanted to throw that out there really quickly. But let's start with day one. So day one, got into the hospital around like 6:40ish, so I could put all of my stuff down. I brought my lunch, I brought my dinner, which I'm laughing about that now because I didn't remember to eat any of them. So I brought those into the hospital, and we wanted to get there around like 6:50 because that's when we have sign out. So if you're not sure what sign out is when you, I'll start off like this. There are different handoffs where you transition care to another team or a different provider. And sign out is the way that you communicate everything that happened with your patients overnight or from the last time that or the total time that you've seen them on your shift, and you tell them, talk about them to the next team. So it's a way to communicate what went down during your shift. So our very first day, our team was actually on call. So what that means is our team was responsible for taking new admissions from 7 a.m. in the morning until 6:30 in the evening, which is actually a pretty exciting thing because we really got to see all aspects of being a doctor on day one. And I would say we lucked out because we didn't cap, I don't think, on day one, and we had a pretty light admissions load. So our cap or max amount of patients that we can take on an admission day is 8, and you would take those 8 patients and add them to your existing number of patients, and that becomes your new census. Total as a team, we can take 18 people, I believe, and it would be split 9 and 9 for each intern, and then we are under the direction of our senior resident who kind of oversees and knows a lot about all of the patients that we have. And then to kind of keep going up, then you have the attending. We also ended up getting a medical student, which has been pretty cool. She's been really helpful. And yeah, it also was like a good moment to reflect on when I was a third-year medical student too, just seeing all of that. And it's been a good week for sure. Overall, this is what my typical day has looked like for the past week. I get into the hospital so that I can do sign out around 6:50 and hear from the night team. And then around 7:15, you go back to your team room. We have our own stations, and you're going to pre-chart. Pre-charting is when you kind of create your outline of your note based off of all of the things that you heard at sign out and from the EMR, or electronic medical record. So in the EMR, you want to look at vital signs, the heart rate, the blood pressure, the pulse ox, which is the oxygen saturation. And you also want to look at any new labs. You want to see any new imaging, notes from consultants, so either some specialist physicians or nutrition or pharmacy or something from respiratory therapists. Like, you want to look at those things to get an idea of where you're at with the patient. And you also want to look through your nursing notes because they can give you some insight as to what events happened overnight. Especially because you arrive around 7 and you start rounding, and that's around like shift change. So there'll be new nurses that came in that didn't necessarily see the patient all night. So they're getting sign out from the night team. And if you ask the new nurse what happened at sign out from the night nurse, they should know, but sometimes the communication just hasn't happened yet, and you have to read in the chart to know directly what happened with the team or with the patient. So after you've pre-charted, you start to come up with your outline of your note. Creating the outline of the note is part of the pre-charting. And that is one thing that I have definitely needed to work on. I've noticed that the days that I'm able to do that have made everything run a lot quicker for me, and I've been able to get out on time versus the days where I wasn't able to do that and I had to like create these notes from scratch after so much has happened throughout the day, and that is hectic, especially when you have to write new history and physicals or HMP notes for new patients on top of the SOAP notes for your old patients. So it definitely helps to do that pre-charting in the morning. Then you're going to physically go and see your patients. Every intern has a chunk of the census that we're responsible for seeing. So you go and you see those patients, you talk to the nurse, especially if it's a patient who has some sort of cognitive impairment, or maybe they're intubated and can't speak or relay what happened overnight. So you want to get an idea of what happened from somebody who was there and was able to, pardon me, and was able to actually account for everything. So after you do all of that, there are going to be certain tasks that you want to get done before rounds. And then you're going to run the list with your senior, figure out where you stand with all of the patients. And then it's time for the attending to come in, and you will present all the patients to the attending and go and see them all as a team. So as a team, you go and see all of the patients, you talk about the plan. While you're going through rounds, you might change some of the tasks that you wanted to do throughout the day, so you just keep track of that. And then after you've finished, you run the list with your senior again, and that's when everyone gets on the same page. This is what needs to be done for this patient. This is what needs to be done for the other patient. And it's also helpful for your senior because while the interns take parts of the list, the senior oversees the entire list. So it's like a way of managing without having to micromanage, and everything can be done more efficiently. And we have a little system that we use to communicate to each other. So you have your tasks that you have to do throughout the day in order to advance patient care and keep everything flowing and getting people back to a nice healthy status so they can go back home and live their lives. And we also, during that time, we have noon conference, which we get lunch there, and thank goodness, because on day one, I forgot to eat my breakfast. I had brought my breakfast, I had brought my dinner, and I forgot to eat both of them. So if not for noon conference, I would not have had anything to eat. Mostly just because I forgot to eat. I was just so busy, which is not good for your wellness. And I have tried to make a point to remember to eat, which you wouldn't think you'd have to remind yourself to do like a basic need, but it's happened. And then throughout the afternoon, you're going to check in with your families, answer any questions from nurses. You'll get phone calls, communicate with pharmacy. I know for me, I've had to communicate with nutrition and pharmacy because we have some patients who need special nutritional needs. So we have to make sure we coordinate that before a certain time of the day. And then you write your notes and make sure your morning labs are ordered. These are kind of the things you always have to do. The morning labs, writing your notes, and making sure you have sign out ready for the next team. And then once you're done with that, you can head on home. Now that was your typical day. You have all these tasks that you have to get done. And hopefully you're out after your 12-hour shift ends and you go home. But after having lived this, I will say it is so much easier said than done. Like, I could tell you the order of how the day goes like over and over again. I could tell it to you again and again until I'm blue in the face. But actually doing it is a lot more difficult than I expected. So that actually brings me to my next point, which there are things about residency that are key to have down pat. And it's almost like even before you get down the medical knowledge, because a lot of that comes with experience, and that is having time management and organization. And now I know I've only been doing this for a week, so I'm not trying to be like, oh, I have all the advice, because I don't. I really, really know I don't. But this is what people have been saying to me that have had the experience, and it is absolutely true. Time management and organization. Time management is important because you only have 12 hours in the day. Now you're probably thinking, only 12 hours? That seems like a lot of time. It is not. There are so many things you have to go throughout the day. And when you think about it, especially if you have a full census, so the full number of patients that you're allowed to take, there can be like 18 patients on your team, and at other hospitals that may vary, maybe more, maybe less, maybe 20, maybe 30, who knows. When you take that amount of patients and you divide it up by 12 hours, that means like you have less than an hour a day to devote to every patient. Plus, I mean, you have noon conference, so then that takes away another hour. I wouldn't say take away because you're learning and it helps you with your plan for later, but you realize that you don't have as much time as you thought. So you're just so busy. As the intern, you are calling consultants, you are working with nutrition to make sure the TPN orders for your patient are in, which I had to do this week. And luckily my senior had been doing it for me before, but now it's time for me to spread my wings and fly. So there's that. You have to update families with the plan, whether that means calling them, getting consent, or talking to them in person. You're the person that all the nurses are gonna call when something goes down. You have to just be the one doing it all. You are the point person for like not point person, I guess it'd be like the front line. You're the frontline worker for your patients, especially the ones that you had under your direct care, and then overall for the whole team. So the work is hard, and with all of those tasks, you have to stay organized, which is something I am still working on. For example, so like the first day I'll grab this and show you. I had like a notebook like this, and I would just write down the things from day to day about it. But the problem with a notebook is that if you have a patient and oh, this is fun, this is ultrasound. Ignore the actual content on here. This is a critical care survival guide they gave us, very nice. But I would be writing down things for a patient, and it just didn't feel like this was enough paper. So what I ended up doing was I got a regular piece of paper, which, do I have anything that I can just pull? Let me grab it real quick. I got this system when I was a 4th year in medical school on my sub-internship. Some of the other residents and interns were doing it. So you take a piece of paper and you fold it over, leave about 1 inch of an overhang. You draw a line down here, draw a line down this crease. You would open it up and draw the line. Then take it, open it, draw a line inside the crease, and then you draw lines across. Each horizontal box is going to stand for each patient, every other patient. So each one corresponds to a different patient. And in that section, now you have your SOAP note format. So you can do subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. And then when you flip it over, you have your to-do list, and it lines up perfectly with the patient's name and all of that information. So what I do is I have my own little shorthand. So in the subjective section, maybe I'll write no acute events overnight, or if I had specific questions to them, I'll write my shorthand for it, and I'll have these little empty boxes that I fill in with pluses or minuses. Then for objective, I have your vital signs, report them as a range. For the physical exam section, this is small on purpose because I want to remind myself to only talk about the pertinence. Yes, I do like the focused exam, but not everything from that exam needs to be talked about while you're on rounds. And then I have the shorthand a lot of people use, like I forget what this is called, but it's for the CBC. And then the fishbone for your basic metabolic panel, and then any new imaging will go in there. This last section is for the assessment and plan, and I break it up by problem. Unless you're in the ICU, then you can do it by organ system, and you have that extra space on the back in case your patients have more conditions that you're treating them for. And then you have your to-do list. So a helpful tip that I learned and was reminded of by my friend from medical school who is now a doctor, she's a first-year resident too, is the OCEANS mnemonic. That stands for orders, consults, electrolytes, your AM labs, notes, and sign out. Those are the things that you have to get done throughout the day so that patient care can keep moving. And I actually drew a line underneath the first 3 because I think those are things that you can get done and prioritize to get done in the morning, even before rounds, technically, as you get better. I am not at that point yet, but that is my goal. So for here, I won't actually write like orders. I will put down what needs to be ordered, like an NG tube. Instead of saying the word consults, I'll say checkbox neurology, checkbox GI, so that I know that I spoke to them. And then electrolytes, you could technically replete on your own. I've tried to give like fluids and stuff before. It's a work in progress. When you're new, you overthink things. So, I mean, all you can keep doing is getting better. So those are the things that you can prioritize before, and then labs and all that stuff you could technically do later on in the afternoon. But don't save it to the last minute, because those notes can take some time, especially when you're new at this. So that is my system. It's good to have a system. And then that notebook that I was telling you about can still have a purpose. I use it for paper. I definitely would say carry some extra paper with you, because you never know if someone's going to come up and be like, hey, are you the doctor for blah, blah, blah? Here's what happened. You need to write it down. Or a patient needs you to write down your name or something like that. That happened to me. I wrote down the names of the care team so she can keep it all on track, because that patient had, it was difficult for them to remember things. So that was helpful. Another thing I will say, learning points for this week, is don't give your number out to patients, like your personal phone number. If you have something that is like a direct line on your work phone and you want to do that, okay. Everyone probably feels differently on how they want to handle that. But for me, I would say don't give out your personal number to your patients, because you might have people who don't have a clear understanding of boundaries. And then for your own mental sanity, you might be getting calls at whatever hour, you know, when you're trying to enjoy your family, and it's a patient maybe from months ago that you don't remember anything about who's calling you. And then also for safety, because you could have someone calling you for advice when really they should be calling 911. So I think it's just better on both parties if you keep that separate. And a good way to do that is to use the Doximity app, because you can make calls from there. You can do video calls that are in line with HIPAA, and you're able to call people, and it gives them the caller ID that you choose and a redial or callback number that you choose. So you could technically call them and it shows up on the patient's phone as Hospital ABC, and then they can call back whatever number you give them, and it can bring them to the operator. So I think that's a good app to use, and I have it. Another thing I will say is to enjoy your time. I've enjoyed everything so far. I actually have my first 24-hour shift tomorrow. So after I finish filming this, I am going to sleep. I know it's like daytime outside, but I'm tired, so I will sleep. And then we have a neurology meet and greet for everybody later on this evening. And I want to get in some time to prepare for my first 24-hour shift. And my next elective is going to be radiology. And I definitely felt like I needed that to get a crash course and everything before I go back on the wards at the local public hospital. So I think that will definitely be good to refresh my skills there. But that's all that I have. I mean, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, The Curious White Coat, so that you can keep up with my journey as a doctor. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.